Hey, it's me, Rob Ryan, and I am back with another incredible conversation here on Entrepreneurial Thinkers. But first, a caveat about programming. So we recorded this conversation for some context back on May 28th. That was about 2 weeks before recent immigration actions here in Los Angeles, which had that occurred before we had this conversation, we obviously would have covered that topic much more in depth. We did not cover that topic in as much depth as we would have liked to, nor did we get to every specific opportunity or challenge that we would have liked to talk about because of some time constrictions. But regardless, it was an incredible conversation that I am really, really excited to share with you. It explores my fundamental belief that we need and we do have entrepreneurial thinkers in every sector and segment of society, not just as entrepreneurs, not just as investors inside the entrepreneurial economy, but in fact, I believe fundamentally we need entrepreneurial thinkers as public officials, as government representatives, as our politicians. We need people who are thoughtful. We need people who attack the biggest problems and biggest opportunities that our societies face, no matter where you live on this planet. We need people like Nithya Raman, the city council person from District 4 here in Los Angeles, who I had the opportunity and great pleasure to sit down and talk with as we explored some of the key issues and challenges that face our society. We talked a lot about Los Angeles, but we also just talked a lot about some fundamental societal issues that I think should resonate with everybody. So I'm super excited to share this conversation with you. Frankly, I hope to have the opportunity to sit down with CouncilPerson Raman again at some point in the future for kind of a follow-on conversation where we can talk about more of these issues in greater depth and even maybe visit issues that arise and present themselves between now and then. But I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did making it for you.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back, or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And if you're a regular follower of the show, you know this is the conversation. I get to have weekly conversations with the best and brightest entrepreneurial thinkers from across all sectors and segments of society and industry as we come together to try and do what my mom always encouraged us to do, which was to try to leave the world a little bit better than we found it. Today, I am super excited, very grateful, frankly, honored in many ways, to be joined by Nithya Raman, our city council person from District 4 here in Los Angeles. Before we get to meet her, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Nithya is a great example of an activist citizen that combined her professional experience as an urban planner with her passion for particular issues in her adopted home city of Los Angeles and turned that into a dynamic political career, becoming the first South Asian woman to serve on the Los Angeles City Council as now the twice elected representative of District 4. These types of citizen to candidate stories aren't uniquely American, but in a world where society continues to seem to distrust our institutions, to have neighbors of ours like Nithya step forward is an inspiring reminder that regular, passionate folks can still step forward and do amazing things that they believe can make a difference. She's a graduate of Harvard and MIT. Wow, Harvard's in the news a little bit lately, right? Is particularly passionate about public policy issues such as homelessness, affordable housing, and climate planning, all rooted in a strong executive background in nonprofit leadership as the executive director of Time's Up and the founding of the Sila Neighborhood Homeless Coalition. She's a wonderful mother of 2 children and a supportive partner who has marched alongside her husband during the TV film industry writer strikes in 2023, when she unknowingly was also marching alongside my daughter. And she ran initially on a platform anchored in a new approach to public safety, homelessness, housing, and climate planning, which we are going to dive into deeply today. And frankly, it's that aspirational platform stance which is what makes her, you, Nithya, exactly the sort of entrepreneurial thinker that I believe we need in every part of our society. So, Nithya, finally, welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob. It's such a pleasure to be here.
It's been quite a journey. I will jump right into it. For those that are in our closest circles in your office or in my personal life, they know that we were meant to have this conversation back on January 8th at about 3 p.m. on the afternoon that eventually wound up chasing me out of my apartment like 4 hours later because of the Sunset Fire coming down Runyon Canyon, which is like 2 blocks from my house. So it's been a tumultuous time. It's been a busy, intense time for you, for the council, for the city as a whole. And I want to ask you if we can use this not to look backward about what happened or what went wrong or what we could do differently, but maybe just to look forward. 2 questions. One, kind of you live inside the heartbeat of the city. Like, how are we doing as a city? And then secondarily, maybe as we look back on these fires of 2025 in LA, do you think that there's a chance that parts of it could become catalytic things for good, or maybe kind of progress in the long term?
Yeah. So let's start with how we're doing in City Hall. And, I want to be totally honest with you, Rob, that this is a very hard time in the city of LA. And I don't think it's just the perspective of somebody who lives in City Hall, or who works in City Hall and feels like sometimes I live here. But the city is dealing with a lot of pressures right now that I think have have a dulling effect on where we are right now. We're seeing a real big drop in entertainment industry, local production here, as well as other kinds of local economic indicators, including tax revenues, tourism, especially after Trump's big federally led antagonism towards other countries, which has really dropped tourist revenue. It just feels like we are in this moment right now where the things that drove Los Angeles, the things that powered this city, at least in recent years, have been sputtering a little bit. So that's been really tough. And then on top of that, these fires, which between the Palisades and Altadena, I think they really transformed how people thought about our local landscape and how secure and safe we feel as residents here. And this is a stat that somebody shared in City Council the other day, somebody from our tourism department, who said that people from outside of Los Angeles think that 40% of Los Angeles burned in the fires.
Yeah.
Right? A very small percentage of our region and our city were actually impacted by the wildfires. As catastrophic as they were, it was a relatively small percentage. But I will say, even though that number is factually incorrect, I think spiritually, it has had that big of an impact on our sense of stability, our local sense of safety and security. And I think combined with all of the other uncertainties that we're facing, kind of the federal turbulence, the markets, the tariffs, and the ports drive so much of our local economy as well. And those tariffs have had a huge impact on our ports. The entertainment industry changes. All of that combined have led to this moment in Los Angeles, which has felt very, very challenging.
Yeah.
And that has happened alongside and along with what I have felt is like a widespread loss of faith in the ability of our local elected officials and maybe government overall, because I don't know that there's more faith in federal government or state government, but just a loss of faith that our local leadership and our elected leadership have the capacity to lead us out of this, or that there's any leadership locally to be able to lead us out of this, elected or otherwise.
Right, because you get a segment that doesn't trust the public sector, then you have a segment that doesn't trust the private sector people, and then we don't like the rich guys, and some of us do, and then some of us don't like the politicians, but wait, some of us believe that that's the only way. Yeah, it's right. We're in this almost inextricable vortex of negativity.
Yeah. It's a gloomy,
and again, you have already answered and laid yourself bare in this very humbly, but I will say from the outside, right? So from Hollywood talking to City Hall right now, right? I can't imagine how your staff, the people, like literally you do live inside this bubble of this spinning, like it's one negative problem after another every day. Whereas maybe some like outside that bubble, there is like another sense. Maybe there is okay, yeah, it's bad. It's a challenging time, but
yes,
like we have lived through challenging times before in this city.
Absolutely. We have definitely lived through challenging times before. And I wanted to share something that one of our office staff members who works as a field deputy in the office mentioned in a staff meeting recently, which is that he has said that in recent months since the fires, especially right around the fires, but even in the months since then, he has felt that he has had to be a therapist for people who are coming to us with their fears, and that we have had to kind of help them navigate those fears, even as we're trying to problem solve city problems. So, I think this is a rough moment. At the same time, we are taking very hard steps in the city of LA to deal with that loss of revenues and our broader budget crisis, and being honest with some of the changes that we need to make in ways that I haven't seen before in LA. We're having real conversations about what it means to potentially reduce recruitment classes for new LAPD, because we are facing such a significant budget constraint that keeping our class size at the old level would have meant slashing entire departments.
Right.
And leaving our services so stripped bare that we wouldn't be able to function as a city anymore, public safety or not, So I just, you asked, is there anything that we can take from, any lessons that we can take from the fires, as devastating as they were? And I do think that this moment is one where I'm not sure whether it's because of the fires or whether it's just because of our broader context, but I do think that people are willing to have tough conversations about what are the costs and benefits of actually taking particular decisions here at the city that I hope will lead us to a better place overall in LA. And I'm really I'm hoping that we can make full use of that opportunity.
That's as a citizen, as an outsider, that's my sense, right? Is that we're in a moment, and not to play on the tragedy of the combination of circumstances that you've mentioned. Well, some of which are like once in a lifetime, some of which are once generational, right? Some of which are like the fires are once in 100 years type of circumstances. But we are, sometimes that's what it, right? Like it's got to break down, or some things, and this is a terrible metaphor, right? Something's got to burn down before you stand in that and you have to really, really face like, okay, how can we do this differently? The status quo simply wasn't acceptable, right? Maybe getting away from the fires, maybe like, again, Hollywood industry, like film and entertainment. Okay, maybe, status quo, like everybody kind of took it for granted. Everybody did. The industry did. The writers did. The politicians, like everybody was kind of like, oh, it's our thing. Right. Until somebody woke up one day like Silicon Valley did, say 25, 30 years ago, and went, oh, wait, there's venture capital investors in London now, and there's venture capital investors in Chicago. And right. So we've distributed and remotified everything. So that might be, to your last point, thank you, that might be the takeaway, is that in this hard moment, we have an opportunity to face up to our realities and say, like, how can we do this better?
Right. And to have honest conversations about the trade-offs that we're going to have to make in order to preserve our future and to ensure that we're building resiliency here in LA. Yeah. And I think now is the time to do that. I think it's absolutely essential.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Haney and Company. We all know that in today's complex financial landscape, having a trusted advisor can make all the difference. Since 1960, Haney & Company has been providing comprehensive accounting services to a diverse range of clients, from small businesses to large corporations. With nearly 400 professionals across 13 locations, they offer services in tax, audit, business consulting, and client advisory. In fact, their commitment to excellence has earned them recognition from Accounting Today and Forbes magazines. At Haney & Company, though, it's not just about balancing books. It's about building lasting relationships based on trust and mutual growth. So visit HaneyCPAs.com. That's HaneyCPAs.com to learn how they can support your business's financial journey. All right, so this is a funny, in the light of what we just said, this question is going to be funny, so we should approach it with a smile, because it was written back in my mind in like August or September as you waxed lyrically online one night during the Democratic National Convention, saying essentially like, wow, the rhetorical freedom available during campaigns compared to the pragmatic difficulties of day-to-day governance is like two different worlds. And so I ask you now in question format, like in today's political reality, how do you still manage to lead with an inspirational energy, which I will tell you as a constituent, you do. So how do you manage to still lead with an inspirational energy of a campaign over the course of years of just having to like bear down and deliver on pragmatic bureaucratic governance.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. That's very kind of you to say that, because I will say that that gap between what it means to govern and what it means to promise a better future is one that I really struggle with on a day-to-day basis. I have a lot of big aspirational goals for Los Angeles. Achieving even the simplest goal has felt like, I mean,
pick your metaphor.
I know.
Right? Yes. Boulder, mountain, and
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Goliath, right?
I
Yes.
mean, yes, it has been really challenging. So I think, for example, I think everything here in Los Angeles is determined by a bureaucratic capacity, right? And we have now had, and we're in the middle of one right now, potentially, because although we did save a lot of jobs in this most recent budget, there's still layoffs on the table. What we've done here in LA is we are in a context that is determined by the limited municipal financing available in California because of Prop 13, right? So every year,
That's that's by the way, that's your headline right there. Like that's the thing. That's the proverbial, as we used to say in Chicago politics, growing up a Chicago child of political people, like the third rail, right? That's the thing that you just never talk about, never touch. But kudos for even mentioning it.
Well, but it shapes everything about my context, so I have to mention it. So we're in a situation where Prop 13 has limited our ability to grow our tax base along with our population, and every year that we get further from 1978 or whenever it was passed, I think makes it harder to fill the gap. And because of that, our city government has always gone through boom and bust cycles, which are really, really intense in California. And you can see that in other cities as well, because there's other cities that are facing the same kind of budget deficits that we are right now. San Francisco is struggling with that. San Diego is struggling with that. But what we've done in times of economic uncertainty in the past is that we have cut employees. So we did that during the 2008 crisis. We did that at the beginning of COVID when we didn't have any money coming into LA. We actually had something called a separation incentive program, in which our most experienced, our most knowledgeable, some could argue our most effective employees were offered incentives to leave the city, further hollowing out a city that that desperately you need more than a Google Maps for LA City Hall. It's a maze. It's a maze. And it took me a while to learn how to navigate it. And I would say we still haven't really fully learned, but bureaucratic capacity has been undermined over and over again here in LA. And so getting even the simplest things done can take so much longer than you expect, so much longer. And there are so many unexpected hurdles that are placed in your path before you can get there. So for example, I think of something, I put forward a motion related to creating a database of affordable housing units that are produced across the entire city with a common application form for them, so that you could easily find where the units were and you could find a way to apply for them.
If we can Common App apply to all the UCs, we should be able to Common App apply to all the available affordable housing.
Exactly. And for me, this wasn't just let's make it easier to find and apply to affordable housing units, but it's also a way of restoring faith in our system, because a lot of people are looking at new density bonus built buildings where there is new affordable housing and saying, that looks like a luxury building to me. Is there really affordable housing in there?
Right. I would never apply. I won't walk in. I'm embarrassed to go in there and ask. Right. Yeah.
Right. Or just they look at it, even if they are never going to apply, they already live in the neighborhood and they look at that new building. And they're very skeptical that they're actually building the number of units that they're supposed to be building. Right.
Yeah.
So to me, this was a no-brainer. Let's build a database which makes it easier to apply, and let's build more trust in our system of housing, right? So that we can build support for housing overall. I put forward a motion, the council passed it very quickly, and then it took a year and a half or more, almost 2 years before a vendor was finally approved by the council to build out.
To build this database.
To build the database. So we haven't even started building it yet.
Right. You're like, we literally just needed a spreadsheet. I just needed someone who was good at Excel.
I mean, yes, like it, basically, I think a spreadsheet with some kind of a web page, right? That's all you needed. Yeah, and it took us this long, and we haven't even built the thing yet. We're just starting to build it, right? So when even relatively simple things, basically it took so long because there were so many challenges in communication between the city attorney's office and the housing department in making sure that we could figure out what kind of vendor we could identify, what process we needed to use to find that vendor, to put finally an RFP in place, which means a request for proposals. That then takes a set number of months. Then the proposals had to be evaluated. And finally, a contractor was approved, and it took about triple the time that I thought it would take to do a very, very simple thing. And now we can finally start. And that's pretty common for the city of Los Angeles. Like, that is not a usual amount of time.
Amidst all that, you will show up in Sherman Oaks at a kid's party. You will go to Griffith Park and help replant trees. You will show up in Los Feliz this is where Disney was started. And now it's a skate shop, right? Like, and you'll do so like, as a human.
Yeah.
Not a politician, not just as a person, as a woman, as a mother, as a human being. Like, how do you bring that energy, which again, you do bring, even though obviously it feels like you're carrying the weight of the world. Like, how do you manage to think your way through that? Just say, like, this is the part where we can make an impact. Like, I can change a life today. I can ripple affect something today, while I know that this is the thing that I deal with when I go back to the office on Monday.
Well, part of it is, I think that there are a lot of things that we can do which are low-hanging fruit. So one of the most exciting things about my job is that I can see somebody experiencing homelessness in my district, and I know that I will likely have a pathway for them to get back into stable housing, right? May not be immediate. It may take time. But the number of people that we have been able to get indoors and off the streets of Council District 4 has been something that's given me immense pride, and has been, it doesn't take 2 years. It doesn't happen overnight, but it doesn't take 2 years to happen.
And it is, practically speaking, because it's a problem 45, 50 years in the making. It's like, societally, it wasn't just a District 4 problem, right? Like, it is an ongoing response. And so you may very well effectively help this group of people who are in need of housing, and then 6 months later or 3 months later, there may very well be some other people who are in that same spot.
Exactly.
Right. And so it is not like, if we just sweep everybody up and make them disappear and like send them to the desert, then we wouldn't have to worry about them, which of course is not a real answer to anything in life.
No, not at all. And I think the other thing that I really appreciate about this job is the capacity to be able to defy expectations of how government should be relative to residents, right? So rather than having a totally reactive and sometimes unresponsive local government, to have a city council office that's pretty proactive. Like, we're organizing community events. When we come to them, we're enthusiastic. There was a program in our district where there's a relatively new law in the state of California, that every city has to be doing organic waste recycling, like composting, basically.
Okay.
And the Bureau of Sanitation was giving out composting pails that people could put on their countertops, that they could put their organic waste in and then put it separately into the green bin in their home or in their apartment building, right? We dropped off or gave away at events and at doors over 10,000 composting pails.
Awesome.
And it was a way to show up at someone's front door with composting pail in hand, or at an HOA meeting or at a neighborhood event, and say to them, hey, here's something that you really like. I know everybody likes composting. People get excited about it. It's one of those things that people get really excited about. And then use that as a moment to say, oh, and by the way, we're here from the council office, and here's the other things that we can do. When the pandemic protections for tenants ended, Our office actually did a very, very large door knocking campaign to let people know about their rights as tenants, how those rules were changing, and what resources they had from the city to go on, right? And to use to help protect their own tenancy and stability in their own homes. And we built that program out from our own staff. We were the first council office to put that kind of program in place. And now other council offices have put programs like that in place as part of their regular course of work. And that's been really exciting. So it's things like that where you are thinking about how you would want the government to look and trying to change it into something that you would want to be met with.
Right. How it would serve you as a citizen, just as a resident. Like if I lived somewhere, if I lived in Phoenix, how would I want the city of Phoenix government to serve me?
Exactly.
And so again, it's so simple yet again, and I get this. I also get that the whole premise of our conversation is probably unusual in the context of conversations that you get asked to have, right? Because I'm intentionally asking us to lean forward and to accept a baseline premise of governance that is, in a place this big, it's complicated, it's hard, it's unnecessarily inefficient and bureaucratic, because that's just what it is. And then where are the spaces that people like yourself can come along?
Yeah.
And you're not alone on the council. There are others who are also forward thinking and trying to think on a daily basis, how can we change a local government so that it serves more of the people's day-to-day needs? Again, I grew up in Chicago. I've watched mayors lose elections because they didn't get a street plowed and get the snow off of it after a once in 100-year blizzard. That was basically my life in 1977, right? So it's like I've watched mayors lose and watched political winds shift because they didn't do the quote unquote like fill the potholes.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
And so like I have one question, and we're going to get into all the big issues that I'm going to cue you up to be able to talk to us, kind of almost hit list on the big things that I know you want us to focus on in the city.
Yeah.
But before that, I do have one kind of last curiosity question, which is just this. I sometimes get frustrated as a resident who's a bit of a political, nerd. So I think to myself, like, man, you're yelling at this person online. And the truth is, this person is literally just the current person trying to clean up something that was caused by a series of decisions that were made here in the city in the 1980s or in 2010, or by the prior 3 mayoral administrations or the prior 4 city councils, half of which the prior city council is in like federal prison, right? I mean, so like how is on a daily basis, and you've already kind of answered it, but if there's anything you want to add to this, how do you come to work and say like, okay, District 4 team, like our job is to meet our constituents and our citizens where they are, while also doing the really complicated heavy lifting and negotiations at a more enterprise level, let's call it, to try and fix the stuff that they blew off and ignored in 2008 or 1995, or as you said, 1978 with Prop 13. Like that's a fine. I mean, your staff is amazing, and they must have to carry a lot of that work.
Yes.
While you're in the busy enterprise negotiation stage of going like, how do we make Los Angeles better for the next 50 years?
Right. Well, I think the biggest thing is empathy, right? I think you have to be able to say, like, for example, on the issue of homelessness has gone down in LA for the first time in years, last year and this year, right? For the first time, after years of increases, it went down. In my district, it had been going down already, but street homelessness went down in LA as a whole for the first time last year, significantly, over 10%. But the reality is that no one in LA is going to be happy about progress on homelessness if there is an encampment on your street.
100% true.
That's all people care about is have you addressed the encampment on my street? And if you don't address the encampment on my street, I don't care if it's improved for everybody else, right? So
I won't believe her. I won't believe Rob when he says, but I can tell you, I live in Hollywood. Liz and I live in the same neighborhood. Like, it's better here than it was last year, the year before, the year before, the year before. And they're like, I don't care. It's bad. It's not, there's 3 people on my street corner.
You're right.
Like, whoa, there's 14 million people live here, man. Like,
yes. I mean, but that I think that's the empathy that you have to bring to every conversation.
I love that.
And I think people don't want to be educated when they come to the city. They don't want to be taught why what they're asking for is unreasonable or whatever. You just listen, you hear them, and you empathize, because ultimately what they want is something that honestly they should have, which is a city that works, right? And
They want that snow cleared off the street after the blizzard.
want that snow plowed, right? After a blizzard, they want it. They want that snow plow, and that is not a wrong expectation, And I think it's humbling, and I think as much as people in Congress and other levels of government face a lot of public anger, I do think that our jobs in city council, particularly in LA, are among the hardest jobs in government across the entire country.
100%. I mean, and again, as an old guy,
only the mayor has it worse than me. I will say.
Right? Yeah, and ironically, in a system that isn't mayor power intensive, right? In a system in a system that is council power intensive.
But it's the exact same thing that we struggle with in what you just said, which is the mayor is held responsible for everything. Even the fires in a city that she doesn't even represent, Altadena.
Yep.
She is the person who is held responsible for everything, for decades of negligence, for decades of a housing crisis, for decades of a homelessness crisis. And she's
the park survey that came, like about the scoring of the parks and scoring of parks in all cities, right? It literally listed, I think I read this yesterday, like a century of disinvestment in parks, right? And yet you all will be held accountable for that.
Right.
Like that which has been going on for 100 years.
Right. But I think this is not a problem that's unique to LA local government either, right? I was talking to somebody who worked in the Biden administration a couple of days ago, and they faced the same issue. They were governing during a time of incredible economic, growth after a period of struggle in the country. And everyone said, this is not good enough. They just could not tell the story that people were doing okay in America after a period of rockiness. So it's a very common problem. And I think one thing I do want to emphasize, Rob, is that I think this problem of narratives and anti-incumbency is one that's been underscored by social media.
100%.
And I think there is, I think social media posts that are negative, that are critical, that are complaining, that are
spin right up.
Fingers, they spin right up, and they get the algorithms do their jobs.
And we live in an enragement engagement society.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is
that's
again,
a really good phrase.
Foisted upon us by the companies that we bought into and attached to our phones because they told us they were going to connect us and they were going to make us all like family. We were going to bring barriers down. And unfortunately, they did that, but then they also brought with it a mechanism of control, which has screwed up the narrative. All right, I don't want us to spin down this rabbit hole too deeply because I know you have a lot to say about a lot of really important things we're going to get to. I have one personal question before we do that.
Yeah.
What was the catalytic moment that inspired you to leave the private sector career and run for office?
Well, we had wanted to have a meeting with our former council member, with the council member who used to represent the area. When I say we, it was the volunteers involved in our local homeless coalition that I helped to found, along with some of my neighbors. We were a group of neighbors that were eager to see investments in shelter in our neighborhoods. We were YIMBYs. We wanted shelter in our backyard, SIMBYs, I guess.
Yeah, you were like abundance before Ezra Klein said the word abundance, apparently.
That's right. Yes. So we really wanted to build more housing. We wanted to build more shelter. We wanted to have more services. And we were unable to even secure a meeting with our local representative. And we knew that he was somebody who did meet with local neighborhood representatives because I would read it in his newsletter, and I would read about the homeowners associations that he was having meetings with. And so I felt really frustrated. I thought to myself, here is this group of people around me volunteering to help our homelessness crisis, volunteering so much that we had to turn volunteers away. That's how enthusiastic people were about wanting to help. And this guy won't even meet with us. And then I thought, you know what? I can do better than this. And so that was really the catalytic moment. And I do also fundamentally think that We are at a turning point moment here in Los Angeles, and like homelessness is, of course, the issue that I've spent a lot of time working on, both in the district and trying to fix our very broken system citywide. But at the root of all of that is the lack of housing.
Right, and that's like let's jump right in because
Okay.
we've got time constraints.
Yeah,
We were a little
please.
late starting, so I don't want you to be late for your next meeting because I don't want some constituent to decide to run for office because you were late for the next meeting because of me. So like, we've got the big issues, right? And housing is the obvious, the behemoth issue. So
Right.
homelessness, housing development, climate policy, which almost seems like who cares about the climate now? Like if we don't build housing and solve homelessness, climate, like it's gone and become a nice to have. Public safety at the neighborhood level,
Right.
and then just general economic opportunity. What I want to know or give you the chance to talk about is how do we as entrepreneurial thinkers, right? How do we think differently about these 5 kind of pillar issues in our city? And let's just go ahead and start with housing. How do we think differently about it? And then what do we got to do?
Well, to me, I think the big thing that we need to do in LA is to become a true pro-housing city, and to recognize that movement and change in our neighborhoods and movement of people around the city to new houses and to new places, that kind of mobility and movement is not only part of what it means to be an Angeleno, but part of what it means to be an American. You know, they're like people used to move a lot. They
Yeah.
used to move a lot, and people are moving less now. And the fact that people are moving less is actually worse for our economic mobility and worse for our outcomes as a place of real economic opportunity, right? And so let's get back to what LA has always promised to be, and for me has been, and for so many people has been, which is a place of opportunity and a place that welcomes people who want to be economically mobile, who want to move up. And to me, that means acknowledging that we need a lot more housing. And not just affordable housing, but housing at every single income level. You know, because there are a lot of people, and I think I may have said this already, or it may have been in a previous conversation, but we need housing that city employees can live in. You know,
Right.
we need housing that people in the public sector can live in. We need housing that teachers can live in. We need housing for young families who may not be working in high income fields, none of whom will qualify for affordable housing, right?
Right.
We desperately need affordable housing, desperately need it. We desperately need housing for people who are experiencing homelessness, but we need housing for everybody else too.
Yeah.
Economic activity in LA depends on us being able to have housing for all of those people. And we just don't have it right now. So for me, this question of housing and how we approach it as a city and how we become a truly pro-housing city, that is going to make or break our ability to be resilient into our future.
That is kind of the answer. I mean, not to, again, diminish the importance of all these other anchor issues, but that is the issue that if we don't become what you just described,
Yeah.
we intentionally are shooting ourselves in the foot for the next 50 to 100 years.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Do we need do we need a I guess the current language around this is a social housing policy. And I grew up in a world where we used to just call that government housing,
Right.
Like, and by the way,
Housing.
and then I lived through the world of my young adulthood where we like bastardized that phrase and made that phrase mean something terrible because frankly, we probably weren't very good at maintaining it over. So like, do we need the newest, the healthier, the better version, the 21st century version of social housing, which works in Europe in some places?
Right. Yeah. Social housing is an absolutely essential part of all of that new growth. What I do want to shy away from is saying that social housing is the only thing we need. Right.
100%. Right.
And we
Can't be the only answer.
No, cannot be the only answer. But I do think we need to get creative about ways of thinking about housing that don't entirely depend either on entirely like public housing or, you know, publicly built housing that's totally subsidized or fully market rate, you know, housing. Like there has to be something in between that generates the kind of communities that we want to generate. And I think social housing, like the kind we see often in Vienna or in other major European cities, is exactly that. The missing link here for me is how do we finance that kind of housing?
Right.
Because I think you need to have sources of financing that are willing to take lower returns on investment than what has been in place in the past. And I just don't know that we have a financing model for social housing locally that has shown the kind of promise that I think we need in order to really make this into a widespread thing. And I'm hoping that we can figure that out, especially now that we have funds that have been set aside for figuring it out from ULA, from our
Right.
United to House LA tax that was passed.
Which is a much better name than the social moniker that we've given it, which is like a misnomer about where it comes from and what it is. But that's a whole other podcast. Right? Yes, exactly. We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at eSudo. You know, running any business, but especially a law firm, means balancing a lot. And technology, frankly, shouldn't be a headache. eSudo makes information technology and cybersecurity simple for law firms large or small. With over 20 years of experience, they specialize in everything from Microsoft 365 management to advanced cybersecurity solutions. They help you to stay ahead of threats, manage your data securely, and keep your tech running smoothly so that you can focus on what matters most, your clients. eSudo understands the legal industry's unique needs, offering tailored solutions to ensure that your firm is always in compliance and always protected. Are you ready to upgrade your firm's technology or get help with your questions? Visit esudo.com. We've talked about homelessness. We've talked about it right out of the gate, and I think in a very honest and very forthright way. It is literally like at the street by street neighborhood level.
Right.
That's how you have to meet it. That's how you have to address it. Talk to me if you can, because I know this is a passionate bit of your whole thesis of life, right? So how do we develop housing to develop the city economically while doing it in a green forward way, right? Like how do we, and again, that could be a whole podcast in and of ourselves, but
Right.
How do we still do that? Or is that just too much to ask for at this point?
So I don't think so. And one thing I do want to emphasize is that for me, my housing advocacy and my environmental advocacy are one and the same.
Yeah.
You know, building more, some of our largest sources of emissions are from the transportation sector, particularly in California. And we have such high rates of automobile use and driving in LA because people cannot afford to live where their work is. And a lot of our jobs are in job centers in places like, you know, on the West Side, in Culver City, in downtown LA, in mid-city. So there's job centers all over the place, but there's no housing around these job centers. Downtown LA is an exception. There is a lot of housing there, and some of it is more affordable, right? But in many of these other places, there is not that much housing nearby. And so people are commuting from very far distances to get to these neighborhoods. And because they are forced to live very far afield, public transit is not able to serve them. And so they're getting in their cars and they're driving here, adding to our local emissions. And even
so
if
housing and climate, it's the same.
To me, it's the same. So building more densely, building infill, building near jobs, that to me is a no-brainer if we really want to address our climate crisis head on. So for example, you know, as we're thinking about big economic investments that are planned for LA, like the investments in Radford, they want to do a big expansion of that lot, adding more sound stages and hopefully welcoming more productions there. Parallel to that, we need to see more housing on Ventura Boulevard, you know, so that people can take the bus to Radford, that they don't have to drive into Radford from, you know, wherever they're coming from, and adding to the gridlock and all of that. So, you know, our economic development policy and our housing policy have to be aligned. And I think that can be part of a very strong climate strategy. Of course, new construction, ideally, we really want to make sure that it is being done in ways where you're investing in environmentally friendly materials, where you're putting in heat pumps and all electric buildings wherever possible, that you are investing in high efficiency construction. All of that is really important.
Yeah.
But to me, there is a more essential link between housing and environment, which is that the closer you live to your job, the closer you live to your community, the better it is for the environment.
I'll put it on record right now. It's my podcast. I get to say these things. Like we should like Hollywood Boulevard, my neighborhood, should look like the Wilshire Corridor on the west side. Like just high rise after high rise after high rise of every type of housing. Just line it up, right? Because here it is, walkable neighborhood, everything you need in the neighborhood,
Right.
nature right behind you. I mean, so even walkable access to nature, public transit, subway system, buses.
Right.
So yeah. All right.
Well, one thing I wanted to say too is that it doesn't always have to be high rise in order to be high density.
This is why I'm not in charge of public planning.
Yes. Look, I think about cities like Paris or other European city centers, which have much greater densities than LA and are doing it through 3 to 5 story buildings, right? And to me, as I'm walking around on the ground floor, a 3 to 5 story building feels good to me. It
Sure.
feels like a human scale kind of really nice environment, right? And that, I think, is a vision that a lot of people can get behind in LA.
100% agree.
People
I live in a 5-story building.
Isn't it a
Right.
nice building?
It's like, and there's, well,
Yeah.
I don't know what, 30 some odd people, right? Ish in the building. And it's much more a sense of community than no offense to the beautiful apartment complex in Koreatown that my daughter and her fiance used to live in, but that like 900 unit apartment complex, which basically felt like I was in an airport hallway.
Yeah,
So-
right. And I think we need to have room for both, but I don't want to turn people off of density by saying it can only happen through high rises. I think, and I actually think with the investment market looking like it is, and with our climate on kind of tariffs looking like it is, I actually think that a 3 to 5 story building might be more feasible and doable in our
Totally
current
agree.
economic environment than a high rise because of the costs needed to build a high rise. So I really like talking about that and getting people excited about that because I think that's a really exciting way of getting us to the city that we want to be.
Yeah, I love it. All right, last question, because we got to let you go. Your staff is being dutifully reminding me of this.
Well,
So we're not.
I came in late, so I don't want to.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We've got the substance of it, and hey, this will just be our excuse for having to have another future conversation.
Exactly.
Right? Because we could have a whole conversation about immigration and touch on the national impacts. You yourself are an immigrant story yourself, which that is a whole thing that people need to understand, and that's a national issue that is deeply affecting us here in Los Angeles.
Right.
There's a whole other discussion we could have, and we should have at some point. I would love to have at some point, I should say, about public safety, kind of at the neighborhood level. And all of that, I think, is really, as you say, smartly wrapped underneath the umbrella as if we can attack housing and become the type of truly pro-housing city that we're capable of becoming. And even this last example, I love that, right? It's like I remember recently you put a motion, or maybe it's already been passed, about like single staircase, 6 unit,
That's for 6 stories or less.
Right. Which then I just saw like yesterday, Austin, my Austin friends are like, hey, we did that first. I'm like, well, actually, I think we proposed it at the city council before you did. You may have approved it before we did, but either way, we're going in the same direction. So there's a whole bunch of things we can talk about, but I want to leave this. Again, you are, in my humble opinion, and there will be Lord knows, there will be lots of people on social media that will disagree with everything I've said and everything you've said, and that's okay. That's the price of you being a leader, and me trying to stoke these conversations, which are trying to leave this world a little bit better than we found it. So I would like to finish up at that street level, meeting people where they are. Give me this is not narrative. This is maybe a couple of bullet point examples that you can leave us with that are actionable for people on a daily basis. Give us 1 or 2 or 3 actionable steps that any average Angeleno can take today if they want to get involved in their own neighborhood to try and build this city a little bit better than it is.
So I want to make a recommendation that people volunteer on an issue they care about, but in their neighborhoods, like right in their own neighborhood. So, for example, if you care about homelessness, find your don't go and volunteer. I mean, if you live in Skid Row, volunteer on Skid Row, but you don't need to go to Skid Row to volunteer on homelessness. You can volunteer right in your own neighborhood, and that can be some of the most rewarding, positive experiences that you can have. The people who were involved with the homelessness neighborhood volunteer homelessness nonprofit that I helped to start told me that volunteer engagement helped them feel connected to their communities and helped them feel a sense of connection to their neighbors that they hadn't felt before. It gave them a sense of purpose outside of work, and gave their lives in LA as Angelenos, not that they didn't have meaning before, but it gave them meaning as Angelenos. And that is really powerful, because I will say that to me, the most important thing that we need to have right now in order to build our future here is pride in Los Angeles. This is the greatest city in America, hands down. I think it's the greatest city in the world.
So do I.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm so proud, and I feel so humbled and blessed that I get to represent it. It is an incredible, incredible place. And I've lived in a lot of other places, so I know how special
as well.
this place is. And I think that we are we started this conversation off by saying that we're at a little bit of a low moment. I really believe in the future of this city.
100%.
And I think, to me, the thing that people should be doing, can be doing, is to do anything that makes them feel connected to LA and gives them that sense of optimism about our future, and really helps us fight for the future of LA.
Pick the issues that you care about deeply, that you're passionate about. Participate in those issues on a local basis in your neighborhood, or stretch your neighborhood a little bit by the couple of blocks like I did, and walk down to the mayor's Shine LA kickoff event that we did back in the rainy, 6 weeks ago. And then I will do again, as I'll walk into East Hollywood this weekend to do it again, because that's just a chance to engage with. And by the way, quick commercial for that Shine LA program that day. The 6 people that we got attached to as all strangers who showed up there, a young family, an African-American family from DTLA that took the subway out and said, well, hey, lots of people come to downtown to try and help us in our neighborhood. We thought we'd come out to Hollywood to help you and yours.
Nice.
And then a woman who's running for office from Mid-City, and then a woman who lives in Los Feliz, and we just got strewn together. It was the most eclectic group of citizens, of Angelenos.
Yeah.
Right? The family had a 14-year-old daughter, and she's out there soaking wet, and we're doing the bags, and we cleaned up 4 square blocks. And I came home from that day, and I never felt more connected and engaged. And I'm an above average connected and engaged person, right? So if it meant that to me, I can imagine what it means to the people who literally never connect. So 100% validating that. There are limitless ways to do that. Why don't we tell people how they can find your office, find your team online, connect with you? Because that's where they're going to find these volunteer opportunities. And if they're on, social media isn't just for silly stuff. There's a lot of important information that transmutes the office into the city from your team on Instagram, for example. So
yes,
that was my Liz Hartwell shout out, by the way, for the episode.
Yes, Liz, our tireless comms.
We love Liz.
Who makes
we love Stella and everybody else on the team, but we love Liz today.
Yes. So yes, you can find us, our office, on social media at CD4 Los Angeles. So whether on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, CD4 Los Angeles is the place to find us. I do some policy pontificating at Nithya for the City on Instagram.
You occasionally wax poetically about the difficulties between campaign rhetoric and governance on it, right?
Yes. So if you want a little bit more of an informal take on things, Nithya for the City is a good place, and that's on Instagram and I think TikTok, and Nithya Raman on Twitter.
And if there's a form, I know we have the 311 app, which is how you can request assistance or service in your neighborhood for all myriad of things, and it works great. I've used it.
Yeah, so you can use the 311 app, but you can also call our office, or you can.
That's what I was going to say, or email, right?
Or email, yeah. And so we're at contactcd4 at contactcd4@lacity.org. And to call our office, let me get you that number. Our number is 213-473-7004. That's 213-473-7004. 7004. And during working hours, you'll have one of our staff members on the other end of the phone line, and you can ask them your questions, and they'll hopefully refer you out to the right office or to the right person on our team who can help answer it.
That
So those
is
are all
your
the different
city
ways.
government at work for you
Yes,
folks, right
exactly.
there. So in a city where we say we lament the fact that we don't feel connected to our government, and is the institution really helping us or not?
Yes.
Like,
Get connected.
reach through the phone and ask them to help you.
Yes, exactly.
An absolute pleasure. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rob. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for being such a fantastic cheerleader for LA. It's such an important role, and I hope that you're able to reach more people and bring the enthusiasm and love that you have for this city, and spread it far and wide.
You and I are both pragmatic optimists, and I now have a grandson. You have young kids. So we are in this for like what the next 50 to 100 years of LA is going to look like. People always ask me, like, what do you think it's going to look like 100 years from now? Why do you care? You'll be dead. I say, because that's all that matters.
Yes.
It's not just what happens now. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. We know how to find and follow you. Thanks to your staff for arranging this. And we hope to have you back in future for further conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. You know, we can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.